All right, let's head back to Victorian London. We're going to a time when a smell, so bad it literally triggered an engineering revolution that changed cities forever. This is the incredible story of the Great Stink of 1858.
I mean, just try to imagine a smell so powerful, so completely overwhelming, that it could bring the world's greatest city to a dead stop. This wasn't just, a bad odor. This was a full-blown crisis. It was everywhere, in every home, on every street, and eventually, it even crept into the halls of Parliament itself.
And this quote, it just captures the sheer desperation, right? You've got the leaders of the most powerful nation on earth trying to run the country while holding scented cloths to their faces. Their curtains are literally dripping with chemicals just to try and block out the stench. This wasn't just an inconvenience. No, this was a direct assault on the government's ability to even function.
So you gotta be asking, how on earth did things get this bad? Well, a crisis like this doesn't just pop up overnight. Nope. This was the result of decades of neglect, some, let's say, flawed scientific theories, and a city that was basically drowning in its own success.
See, London had been suffering for a long time. We're talking 3 massive cholera epidemics that had already torn through the city, killing tens of thousands of people. These were huge, flashing red warning signs. But the Great Stink in 1858, that was the tipping point. That was the moment the problem became 24/7, totally unavoidable, and, crucially, politically impossible to ignore anymore. It was, for lack of a better term, a perfect storm of filth. You had 3 things all coming together to create a total catastrophe. First, London's drains were basically medieval, completely outdated. Second, you have the invention of the flush toilet, this great new symbol of modern life, which suddenly just floods this ancient system with way more waste. And the worst part? All this raw sewage was being dumped straight into the River Thames, which, you guessed it, was also the city's main source of drinking water. Just wow.
Okay, so the smell finally got so bad that Parliament had no choice but to act, and they turned to one man, Joseph Bazalgette. He was the chief engineer for the city, and his plan, well, it wasn't some little patch-up job. It was a complete, bold, audacious rethinking of how a city should deal with its own waste.
The heart of his whole plan was something called an interceptor sewer. And really, it's a brilliantly simple idea when you think about it. Instead of having all the little local sewers just dump their waste straight into the river, you build these huge, deep tunnels that run alongside the river to catch it all first. They literally intercept the waste before it can do any damage.
So let's walk through how it worked. It's basically 4 steps. Step 1, waste goes into your regular street sewer. Okay, simple enough. Step 2, before it can hit the Thames, Bazalgette's brand new interceptors grab it. Step 3, for the low-lying parts of the city, these incredible monumental pumping stations would then lift the sewage up. And finally, step 4, the whole system would carry all that waste far, far downstream, east of the city, and release it on the outgoing tide. Simple idea, right? But the scale was absolutely revolutionary.
And when I say the scale was staggering, I am not kidding. We are talking about 160 kilometers of these massive new sewers. And get this, they were all built by hand, deep underneath one of the busiest, most chaotic cities on the planet. The ambition of it all, it was just something else.
But here's the thing about Bazalgette. He wasn't just solving the problem for 1858. He was building for the future. The tunnels themselves were these massive, super durable brick-lined structures. He made them egg-shaped, which is actually a genius move because it keeps the flow speedy, even when there isn't much water. But the most brilliant part? He famously took the calculations for how big the pipes needed to be, and he doubled them. His reasoning was, we're only going to do this once, so let's do it right. What foresight!
Okay, so this is where the story gets really fascinating. Because remember, this entire massive, expensive project was approved for one reason: to get rid of a bad smell. But its biggest achievement, its greatest legacy, was something else entirely. And the crazy part is, it happened almost completely by accident.
You see, at the time, the big scientific idea was something called the miasma theory. Basically, everyone believed that diseases like cholera were spread by miasma. Foul, stinky air from decaying stuff. And, it kind of makes sense, right? The river stank to high heaven, and people living near it got sick. The connection seems obvious. But the reality, which we now know as germ theory, is that tiny microscopic germs in the water were the real culprits, so they were fixing the right problem, but for totally the wrong reason.
And that is the beautiful central irony of this whole story. They built the sewers to stop the smell, but in doing that, they accidentally stopped the cholera. They set out to eliminate an odor, and instead, they ended up defeating a disease that had been plaguing London for decades.
And the results? Just look at this. They were nothing short of miraculous. The number of cholera deaths just plummeted after the sewer system was up and running. It's absolutely staggering. This was the ultimate proof, on a massive, citywide scale, that clean water was the key to public health. And they proved it even before they fully understood the science behind why it was working.
But this story isn't all a triumph of engineering. Like with so many of these massive projects, there were hidden costs. The benefits weren't shared equally by everyone, and the human price paid to build it was incredibly steep.
You see, the system didn't actually make the pollution disappear. It just moved it. So while central London, where Parliament and all the wealthy people lived, got a cleaner river and no more stench, all of that concentrated sewage was now just getting dumped further downstream. And this absolutely devastated the local ecosystems and the working class communities who lived out there. It's a classic case of out of sight, out of mind. And of course, we have to talk about the people who actually built this thing. We're talking about thousands of laborers known as navvies who worked in just horrific conditions. Imagine it. Dark, cramped tunnels saturated with methane gas and raw sewage, fatal accidents from tunnel collapses, gas explosions. They were just tragically common. These workers were absolutely indispensable. They were the invisible heroes who literally sacrificed their health and sometimes their lives to build the very system that saved the city.
So, what's the lasting legacy here? When we look back at the Great Stink and Bazalgette's incredible sewers, what do we see? Well, it's nothing less than the invisible foundation of the modern city itself.
What is truly incredible is just how well Bazalgette's system is held up. I mean, look at this. A huge chunk of that original Victorian network is still in use today. It is still the backbone of London's sewer system. That foresight he had, that decision to over-engineer everything and build for a future he couldn't possibly imagine, it was just pure genius.
And that really gets at the deeper impact here. Just think about it for a second. Skyscrapers, subways, millions and millions of people living crammed together in one place. None of that is possible without a way to efficiently and invisibly get rid of all the waste. Proper sanitation isn't just a nice to have, it's the hidden platform that modern city life is literally built on.
And there's a really powerful political lesson in all this. For decades, doctors and reformers had been screaming about the problem. They had reports, they had data, and nothing. Crickets. It took a full-blown crisis, a smell so foul it literally forced lawmakers out of their own building to finally make them do something. It just goes to show you, sometimes, big systemic change only happens when the problem starts directly affecting the people in charge.
This quote really just sums it all up perfectly, doesn't it? We love to celebrate our grand monuments, the big, shiny towers and impressive bridges. But maybe the true foundation of our civilization isn't what we build up, but the unseen, uncelebrated network of tunnels that silently takes care of what we leave behind.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. Bazalgette sewers quickly became this invisible system that everyone in London just took for granted. So it makes you wonder, right? What are the invisible systems that your city depends on right now? The things we never think about, and what would it take for us to finally notice them before it's too late?